What is the funniest joke you know by heart? One day Jeff went to a bar, and while he was sitting there he noticed there is a piano sitting off to the side. The Jeff talks with the owner and asks him, "Why don't you have someone playing that piano?" The bartender tells him, "Well, I used to have one, but it got too expensive, so I had to let him go." Jeff says, "Well, I happen to play the piano. Well, actually I'm also a songwriter, and I would be willing to play the piano for you if you just pay me in drinks." Bartender agrees. So the next day Jeff comes in and starts playing the piano. This is the most beautiful song the bartender had ever heard before. When Jeff finished, the bartender asked him, "What song was that?" Jeff says, "That is a song I wrote called I Screwed Her So Hard in the Butt I Made Her Nose Bleed." The bartender is like, "Well, that's an odd name, but could you play another?" Jeff plays another and it's even better than the first one. Like the sky opened up and a dove flew down. It was that good. The bartender asks him, "Wow, what is the name of that one?" Jeff says, "That one is called I Had Diarrhea So Bad My Shoe Squeaked." The bartender responds, "Well, that's an odd name. I will let you get back to plodging." So Jeff plays for a few hours, and then after this 6th or 7th song Jeff asks the bartender, "Hey, can I have a break? I really gotta pee." The bartender responded, "Yeah, sure, go anytime you want." Jeff goes to the bathroom and comes out. The bartender yells over to Jeff, "Hey, come over here." Jeff goes over to the bartender and the bartender says, "Hey, do you know your fly is down and your balls are hanging out?" Jeff responds, "Do I know it? Hell, I wrote it." This is a story about a man. His wife has told him that if he ever comes home drunk she will leave him. Nonetheless, he goes out. He drinks a lot and throws up all over himself. He turns to his friend and asks what he can do. His friend is helpful. "Go home," he says. "Tell your wife someone threw up on you and put a £20 note inside your jacket pocket. Show her the money and tell her the other man gave it to you for the dry cleaning bill." So this he does. His wife is at first angry, but he explains. He tells her about the drunk man who threw up on him. He shows her the £20. She looks. "But why have you got two £20 notes?" she asks. "Oh," he says, "the other one is from the man who shat in my pants." 3 men were at the gates of heaven, but there was only room for one person. Saint Peter asked each of them how they died, and the best story got through. Man 1, "I was adamant my wife was cheating. I came up to my apartment on the 24th floor and walked in, only to find my wife by herself. I was pleasantly surprised until I saw a man hanging off the edge of the balcony by just his fingers. I went over to him with a hammer and hit his hands until he let go. He fell in some bushes and was still alive, so I grabbed my fridge and lifted it over the edge so it would fall on him. And after all that heavy lifting, I died of a heart attack." "Oh, that is terrible," said Saint Peter as he turned to the next man. "What about you, man 2? "Well, I was on my 25th floor balcony doing some yoga, and I fell over the edge. I was hanging on by just my fingers when I saw a man coming over. I was so relieved. But then he started hammering my fingers and I fell in a bush. I was alive but very sore. He then threw a fridge over the edge onto me, and here I'm." "That is just terrible," said Saint Peter. "What about you?" he asked man number 3. Man 3, "Well, I was hiding in a fridge." A blonde walks into a dry cleaner's and tells the woman at the counter, "I need to have an outfit washed." The clerk was busy and slightly distracted, so she looked up from her work and said, "Come again." The blonde said, "No, it's toothpaste this time." Edit. Lovely. 11k points in my first silver for a tasteless blonde joke. Thanks, guys. A blind girl once told me I was hung like a horse, but she was just pulling my leg. A Jewish woman has 2 sons. One becomes a doctor and the other becomes a politician. The politician gets elected to the state senate, but the mother does not go to the swearing in. He is elected as a US senator and again, she does not attend the swearing in. Finally, he is elected as the US president, and she agrees to attend the inauguration. While he is reciting the oath of office, the woman pokes the man sitting next to her and says, "See that guy up there? His brother's a doctor." 2 nuns sitting on a park bench when a flasher walks past, opens his coat and shows his back. Quote, "Bit so none had a stroke. The other couldn't reach." A man stands in front of a food truck and reads the menu: cheeseburgers, $5 fries, $3 hand jobs, $10. He walks up to the window and asks the beautiful blonde working behind the counter, "Are you the one that gives the hand jobs?" "Yes, I am," she replies seductively. "Well, wash your hands. I want a cheeseburger." Apostrophe. A man walked into a bar in Scotland, sat down and ordered a drink. Next to him was a leathery old Scotsman, well into the bottle in front of him. The man asked the Scotsman if there was something the matter. The Scot replied in groundskeeper Willie brogue, "I'll add, indeed there is. You see this bar here? I made this bar with me own 2 hands, slowly crafting it in the time-honored way of my forebears. It took me 4 months, but do they call me McGregor the bar builder? No. You know the dock that your ferry landed at the night before? I built that dock with me own bare hands, finely honing each joint so that it would withstand the weather that Mother Nature unravels upon it. It took nigh a year, but do they call me McGregor the dock builder? No. And do you recall the livery stable you passed on the way into town? I stood that stable up in 6 months, with nary a bit o' help. To this day that stable is one of the finest in all of Scotland. But do they call me McGregor that stable maker? No. But you duck one goat. When you tell it you have to do your best Scottish accent.
N.
A panda walks into a bar. He orders a simple meal. After finishing it, he takes out a shotgun and fires it at the roof. The bartender asks, "What the hell are you doing?" The panda, walking out, says, "I'm a panda. Look me up." Later, the bartender looks it up, and the definition says, "eats, shoots and leaves." Apostrophe. So 3 nuns are in a car accident and go to hev, and they are standing outside the pearly gates and street. Peter comes out and says, "We've been having a couple of break-ins recently, so we need to verify that you're truly devout in order to let you in. So I'm just going to ask a couple of questions. Very easy, no problem at all, just a precaution." So he asks the first nun, who's a novice, "Who was the first woman?" And she says, "Eve." And he says, "Yup, you're in." And then he asks the second nun, who's a full-on nun, "Where did Eve live?" And she says, "The Garden of Eden." And he says, "Yup, you're in." And then he goes to the third nun, who's the Mother Superior. "What did Eve say when she first saw Adam?" And she thinks about it and says, "Whoop, that's a hard one." And he says, "Yup, you're in." Apostrophe. 2 hunters are walking in the woods when suddenly one of them collapses. So the other one calls 911 and says, "Help, I think my friend died." So the operator says, "First make sure he is dead, then a gunshot is heard." And the guy comes back and says, "Okay, now what edit? Holy duck, this got way bigger than I expected. Thanks for my first gold award, strangers." A father was washing his car with his son. After they were done, his son asked, "Couldn't we have used a sponge?" It's a long joke, and I'm drunk, so bear with me. A businessman is about to go on a long business trip. He wants his wife to be satisfied while he's gone, so he goes to a sex shop to see what toys he can get her. He asks the man at the counter for something really special, and the man shows him what's called the voodoo dick. He shows the customer the magic of the toy by saying "voodoo dick the door," and magically, the dildo rises from the box and starts ducking the keyhole in the door. After a bit he says, "Voodoo dick, back in your box," and the dildo rests back in the box. The man buys it, brings it to his wife, and says, "Whenever you get horny, just say back quote voodoo dick my posse, and it'll do the rest." The husband leaves for his trip, and after a few days the wife decides to give it a try. She opens the box and says, "Voodoo dick my posse," and the result is amazing. The best orgasm she's ever had. After a while she decides she's done and tries to pull the dildo out, but she can't. Her husband forgot to tell her how to make it stop. Panicking, she gets in her car and tries to drive to the hospital, hoping they can remove it. She gets another orgasm on the road. A cop sees her swerve and thinks she's drunk and pulls her over. "Ma'am, how much have you had to drink?" he says. "I haven't had anything to drink, officer," she says. "There's a voodoo dick stuck in my posse, and it won't stop ducking." The cop doesn't believe her and says, "Yeah right lady, voodoo dick my ass." The other day my girlfriend angrily asked me, "Are you even listening to me?" Which is a really weird way to start a conversation, if you ask me. A 17-year-old male walks into a drugstore. He says, "I've been invited to Christmas dinner at my new girlfriend's house. Afterwards I hope there is a chance I get lucky, if you know what I mean, clerk. How about condoms then? They could come in handy. Here's a pack." The young man, after paying, walks to the door, stops, smiles, comes back. "You know what? The mom is also smoking hot. I think I'll take another pack, just in case I get extra lucky." Christmas Eve comes around. The boy sits at the dinner table and the mom asks him to lead the family in saying grace. So the boy complied and starts praying, and praying, and praying. After a while the daughter leans over and quietly says to him, "I had no idea you were so religious." To which the boy replies, "I had no idea your dad was a pharmacist." So Mickey Mouse is talking to his lawyer and his lawyer says, "I'm sorry Mickey, you can't divorce Minnie on the grounds that she is incredibly silly." Mickey replies, "I didn't say she's incredibly silly. I said she's ducking goofy." A woman promises to teach her boyfriend what 69 is. He lies on the floor and she squats down over his face to assume the position and farts. Embarrassed, she stands up and apologizes. She squats down for another go but farts again. She gets up and apologizes again. Before she can have a third go, her boyfriend gets up and goes to walk out saying, "Yeah, this isn't really for me. I'm not having 67 more of those in my face." This farmer has a garden, a cow, and 3 baby cows, but his cow kept eating the flowers, so he decides to move all of his flowers to the roof of his house. One day the baby cows come up to their mother and one asks her, "Mom, why do you name me Daisy?" She told the baby just a few seconds after she was born a daisy petal fell off the roof and landed on her head, so they named her Daisy. The second one goes up to its mother and says, "Mom, why did you name me Rose?" The mother says that a rose petal came off the farmer's roof and landed on her head just a few seconds after she was born. The third baby cow comes up and says, "Well, I grub dick this," and the mom screams, "Shut up, flower pot.